So when I was 22 and fresh out of college, I went to Ghana, West Africa to teach high school for 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer. And when I was there, I had electricity most of the time. I had no running water, no phone, no internet access. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a motorcycle, which was a bummer. But I did have a mountain bike. So after teaching Monday through Friday, I would hop on my bike on the weekends and bike out to local villages to get to know the culture better and to practice my Asante Twi, which is the language spoken where I lived. So one Saturday, I decided I would ride my bike along a dirt road out to a mud hut village about 5 kilometers out, and the village was called Morso. And as I started to arrive in the village, all these villagers were very excited to see me, and they brought me over to the chief, and I did my meet and greet with the chief, and then I said to the chief, "Can I take a picture of you?" And he said, "Of course." And he called over all of his family. And I mean, this was a busload of people. And they all lined up, and I backed up to get them all in the frame, and I snapped a picture. And then I said to the chief, I said, "Can I take a picture of just you?" And he said, "This is the picture of just me. Who am I without my family? This is just me." And I think what he was trying to teach me was that all of us exist in the context of relationships. And this is a core principle of the nonprofit Power My Learning that I co-founded and have been running for the last 20 years. Now, why is it a core principle? Because students also exist in the context of relationships. We just call them learning relationships. So for some time now, we've been working with students, with teachers, and with families. And over this time, a system of learning relationships started to become clear between them. What we noticed was that the students who were most successful had a really strong triangle of learning relationships between the students, teachers, and families. And what do I mean by successful? I mean that the students could increase their mastery of rigorous standards, basically do really well in school. And they could also improve their social-emotional learning skills. And those are the skills you need not just to get to college, but through college. Those are skills like persistence and growth mindset. So today what I'm hoping to do is talk about this idea of the triangle, a little bit about how we can leverage its potential, the impact and how it's working, and then I have an invitation for all of you of how you can join in. So first, the idea. This is a triangle. How could this be so fancy, complex? How can this be such a powerful idea? Well, the first reason why is because you see there's 3 nodes in a triangle. We have the student, the teachers, and the families all in each of the 3 nodes, and they're interconnected by these bidirectional arrows representing the learning relationships. And what that shows you is that it's a system, and the system, when it's interconnected and all the nodes are connected, you get a multiplier effect. The second thing is, in education for a long time, we've tried all sorts of things to improve student outcomes. We've done things like changing class schedule, or changing whether a school is run by the school district or by a charter management organization. And what I would argue to you is that if we don't have an impact on the triangle from those changes, we will not have an impact on student outcomes. And then the third thing, and the final thing that makes this so powerful is the triangle has helped us as an organization be intentional about where we focus. You see, I shared before that I have a background as a teacher. I also have a background as an MIT engineer. And at Power My Learning, we're trying to leverage technology to improve student outcomes. You could sort of say we're in the ed tech space. But we're very different from other organizations in the ed tech space. Because other organizations, they look at the same triangle and they go, "Oh, this is great." They rub their hands together. I can build the best software to do what a teacher can do. Or I can build the most amazing code to do what a family member is supposed to do. And we think that that's a really terrible mistake. Because what it does is it pushes teachers and families out of the triangle and it replaces them with screens. We at Power My Learning, instead of focusing on the teachers and the families, those 2 vertices of the triangle, we instead focus on the arrows and on the sides of the triangle and how we can leverage technology to improve the learning relationships. And by doing that, we can then bring the teachers and families tighter into the triangle. So what about the potential? How can we strengthen the triangle? Well, let me share a little bit about our history. So as an organization, we started working on the right side of the triangle first, the student to family side. And what we did is we brought students and families into the school building, and they had workshops, and we saw the magic of what happened when they learned together. Then about 10 years ago, cloud computing became a reality, and we built a web platform with the help of the Gates Foundation. And with that web platform, we are now able to do work on the left side of the triangle, where we were now doing teacher professional development and helping teachers improve their practice, basically helping them stop teach to the middle and start teaching in a more personalized, differentiated way. We had a lot of success already at this point. We were seeing that compared to schools that we were not involved in, that our schools were having 7 percentage points more proficiency each year in achievement. But this wasn't enough for us. We wanted to get to the bottom of the triangle too. And we tried a whole bunch of things, and all of them failed. So we knew that we needed to be innovative, and we decided to build a skunk works inside the organization and go out and look to see what does the research literature tell us about interventions that can help with the bottom of the triangle. And we found what we were looking for at Johns Hopkins. There was a program there called TIPS, which is a paper-based program that was showing really great outcomes, both on student achievement and social-emotional learning skills. So we asked a professor named Steve Sheldon if he would advise us and help us take some of the core components of TIPS and bring it into our platform. And he said yes. And then that is how Family Playlists came to be. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Family Playlists, because it's our new breakthrough innovation. So suppose I'm a 6th grade math teacher, and I'm teaching coordinate plane. Now, I can now assign a family playlist to all the students in my classroom. It's meant to be assigned about every week or every 2 weeks, not every day, just every week or every 2 weeks. Now, there's a particular student in my class that I'm really interested to see how she and her family do with the family playlist. Her name is Kim. She's very energetic, but she's also very shy. So I assign the family playlist to my class, and all the family partners of the students receive this text message. And it can come in one of 12 languages. Now, in Kim's case, her family speaks English, so you see the text message there in English. Her mom can click on the link, and then the family playlist will then draw on her phone in her web browser. She doesn't have to download an app. She doesn't have to put in a password. Real easy. So the first 3 steps of the family playlist are actually done by Kim, her daughter, by herself. So the first step is Kim watches a little video of coordinate plane. She then gets to practice a little bit with the game. She then gets to answer a couple questions to see whether she's comprehending and she's got it. And those are great steps, and lots of folks do those. Those are basically personalized learning 101. It's very good instructional design. No magic there, done everywhere. Where the magic actually happens is in this next step, which is the family exploration. Because now what happens is Kim sits down with her mom for about 20, 30 minutes, and Kim has to teach her mom about coordinate plane. So Kim becomes the teacher, her mom the student. So what does this look like? So here's an example of an activity that we give to the students for them to teach their family's coordinate plane. Kim and her mom go get a piece of paper in their house. They sit down, they draw the X, the Y axis. They plot their apartment at the origin at 0, 0. They plot a couple of other buildings in their neighborhood. And then Kim and her mom have to answer, are there more buildings in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? And give me a typical day of mom going out into the neighborhood, going to a bunch of different ones of these buildings. And that goes in the student response. Then mom grabs her phone, takes a photograph of what they've done together, and sends it back to me, the teacher. Okay, trying to advance here. Next slide. Okay, oh, sorry, let me go back one. Let me tell you a couple quick things about the family exploration that are pretty important. The first one is, the reason why it's so powerful is because it makes use of something in the research literature called the Protege Effect. The Protege Effect basically says that when you teach something to someone else, you learn it better and you recall it better too. The second thing is, by having Kim play the teacher and her mom play the student, it allows her mom to save face. She might not remember coordinate plane. How many of us remember that? And the more that Kim's mom is confused or asks questions, the better Kim will actually learn it. So I don't understand, unpack that for me. That doesn't make sense. That actually helps Kim learn it. And the third thing to note about the family exploration is that we purposely make these offline. Now, I was saying before, we're ed tech. I have a background as an MIT engineer. Why would we make them offline? And the reason why we do that is because there's research that has shown that screens can actually damage relationships. So if I'm out to dinner with my husband and I take my phone out of my purse and I pop it on the table, even upside down, it can hurt our relationship because it sends a signal to him that I care more about the people that are not in the room who can reach me through that phone than I care about him. So we feel like the family exploration is a good time to put technology aside. So the last step is the family feedback. So now Kim's mom will answer a couple quick yes/no questions for me, the teacher. First one is, how confident did Kim seem when she was doing the coordinate plane activity? Not did she do it right, but just did she seem confident? Then also, was it fun? Do you know a little bit more about what your daughter's doing in school? And then we also have this open response box, completely optional. And that's going to come back a little later, so remember that open response box. So I now, as a teacher, I now get a report back of how all my students and their families did on the family playlist. And I can see each row here is a student. So I get lots of really valuable data that helps me now individualize my instruction the next day. It also helps me look at my students more holistically, know who they are, build relationships with them. So here's an example of some data that came back when we first rolled this out in the field. This is Jaden, and I'm using a pseudonym to protect the innocent. This is the coordinate plane that he and his mom did together, and they also decided to send in a selfie, which just happened naturally in the field. That wasn't something we were even requesting. So what you can see about family playlists is while we were looking for a solution for the bottom of the triangle, we ended up with a solution that went all the way around the triangle, right? So it's hit every one of those arrows. And so we're getting the multiplier effect. The other thing is we haven't taken teachers and families out and replaced them with screens. What we're doing is using the technology to improve the learning relationships amongst these three constituencies. So let me talk real quickly about some of the barriers that we were purposefully designing to address. Because we are a nonprofit, we are very focused on helping students and their families and their school systems in underprivileged areas. So the three barriers we looked at, the first one is the language barrier. 1 in 5 students speaks a language other than English at home. We solved for that barrier by making the translation I shared before. We can translate into 12 languages. The second barrier is the technology barrier. Families earning $30,000 or less per year, only about 50% of them own a computer, meaning a desktop or a laptop at home. So we solved for that by making sure this was mobile. Because that same group of families earning $30,000 or less per year, like 92% of them own a phone. And that data is actually a couple of years old, so I would imagine it's even higher. And then the last one is like a concern about equity. That's something that we care a lot about. We're not trying to just help those families that were already engaged get more engaged, and those families who weren't engaged stay not engaged, because then we're just increasing the gap. So what we've done around equity is we've created a longitudinal report for teachers. So if I'm back to being the teacher again, and I'm about to assign my 4th family playlist, I can pull down a report and I can see what has been the level of family participation on the first 3 family playlists. And I can see from this report that I have 3 students in my class whose families have not participated at all so far. So Power My Learning has created a culturally sensitive rubric so I can sit down and have conversations with those 3 kids. I can say, what's going on at home? If mom's too busy, what about dad? If dad's too busy, what about grandma? Do you have an older brother, an older sister? And if I strike out in all of those, I can say, what about a neighbor? Do you go to Boys and Girls Club? Do you have a mentor? And if I keep striking out, I can say, is there an adult in this school building other than me who asks you about how you're doing in school and what you're learning? And a lot of times, kids have relationships with like the lunch lady, a janitor, someone in the library. So we can have someone like that play this role, because we want to ensure that every student has a strong triangle, each one of those vertices, each one of those nodes. So the impact, how is it working? So we rolled this out only a couple years ago in the South Bronx at a school called South Bronx Prep. Now, it sounds like a charter school, but it's actually not. It's a district school. And it's a school we'd been working with for a couple years, and when we approached the principal and told her we'd like to try this in her school, she said, "You don't want to do this here." And we said, "Why not?" She's like, "I've been in this building for more than 10 years, and we have struggled with family engagement. Like, we're getting maybe 30% of families coming to anything." And she's like, "And I know how this works. You want to pilot it here, you want to get great results, you want to raise money, and you want to scale it, right?" I said, "Right." She's like, "That's not going to happen here." And I said, "Well, let's give it a try." So she said, "All right." And we rolled it out with the math team, the 6th grade math team. And what we saw was that 91% of the families participated in family playlists. Now, that was a big surprise, and it certainly busts the myth that families from underprivileged backgrounds don't care or don't want to be involved. They want to be involved. But the other thing that was most surprising for me was that 84% of the participating families chose to submit feedback to their child's teacher through that open response box that was totally optional. And I don't know about you guys, but when I see an open response box that's optional, I'm like, I'm not filling this in. Like, I have to come up with a cogent sentence. I get no credit. Like, I just hit next. So the fact that 84% of them filled that in meant we were really onto something. And what we saw from the feedback they gave back to the teacher, we saw things that were filled with emotion and pride. So I'll give you an example. So one parent wrote back and said, "I enjoyed working with my son on this assignment. It showed me how different it is compared to the time when I was in school. The work has gotten a lot harder, and I'm very proud of my son's accomplishments." So since then, we've gotten even more feedback, and we've actually rolled out a new starter family playlist where the first playlist asks students to pick a family partner that they're going to work with and explain why. And so these are some of the feedback that we got. And I think I have to stand over here to read it because it's covered here, so hold on. It says, "I wanted to work with my mom because she's cool, smart, and the most important thing in my life. And I enjoy that it gives me and my dad," and this is no joke, I promise you, we didn't pay anyone to say this, "gives me and my dad a chance to bond over math equations, and now I can show him that the methods are different than when he was in school." So these results have really helped us get attention and start to bring this to other places in the country. So we started with only 2 schools our first year. We're now going to be in over 100 this year, including schools in Florida. But what I wanted to share with you is 2 stories that meant the most to me in terms of the impact. So the first one is a story that comes from Jean Dalton, who's the principal of ISC2019 in the Bronx. It's a very under-resourced community. I think she has 20% of her kids in transient housing. And I brought some guests into her school, and they asked her, "What impact is this having?" And she said, "Well, you know, we're in New York, and in New York we have the state test. But good thing is a couple years ago they decided to stop timing it, so the kids can take as long as they want to take the state test." She's like, "So then this year is the first year we rolled out family playlists. And I go to check on the kids. This is about an hour after the bell has rung and they're allowed to leave. She's like, in the past years, the minute that bell would ring, they'd be out of there. She's like, but I go in, it's like an hour after, and I go into that room expecting to see nobody there. She's like, and half my students are still there taking the test. And I said to them, guys, the bell rang, you can go. They're like, no, we got this. She says, so I left, and then about a couple hours later, I rounded the building again. I had a quarter of my students. She's like, at 6 o'clock, I still had 2 students left. I was like, guys, okay, go home. She's like, the stamina, the persistence, she's like, it brought me to tears. And I said to her, that's an amazing story, but why are you attributing that to family playlists? I'm not seeing the connection. And she said, because these are 6th grade students teaching their parents about 6th grade math. And those parents, they're not in the zone of proximal development. It's not like they have all the building blocks already there. They're struggling. These kids are struggling to help their parents learn these concepts. And if they can struggle to help their parents, they're going to struggle. They're going to be willing to struggle themselves. Then the second story actually comes from a teacher, a 2nd grade teacher in Chesterfield, Virginia. And she told us that after rolling out family playlists, the kids, when they were having discussion in class, their vocabulary was so much better, much more fluid, and the kids had a much better sense of themselves as learners. And I saw this same thing because when we were doing a focus group with the kids from South Bronx Prep, these were 6th graders, they would be talking about family playlists that they might have done 3 months ago, and they would talk about it like it happened yesterday, like their memory was so strong of it. It was so salient for them. And they also then talked about how these family playlists, how when they would sit down to do these with their parents, they would say, like every single student had the same story. I'd have to say, Mom, put your phone down. Come on, you gotta concentrate. You're distracting yourself. And I know you're distracting yourself because this is hard. But you know what? Sometimes when it's hard, I learn it better, and we're together. We can do this. Come on, Mom, we can do this. And so what I was hearing the kids saying is that they were actually teaching their family members growth mindset. They're teaching their family members, even though it's hard, you can push through. Intelligence is not fixed. It's something you can work on. It's something that's malleable. So those were the most meaningful for me, but I also want you to hear from one of our students. So this is a student named Maria. Again, it's a pseudonym, and I will let you hear from her. Uh-oh, we need sound. Guys, we need some sound. I think they're working on it. She was much louder when I saw her. So hold on. Do you guys want me to keep going, or you want to put her on?
So I like doing the family playlist, and I do it with my mom, and then sometimes it's hard because like she really didn't, when she was a little kid, she didn't go to school, so then I have to like teach her even more because she wouldn't understand it. And also like sometimes I struggle with words in Spanish because she speaks Spanish, she doesn't speak English. So then I have to translate it to Spanish, and then sometimes I don't know how to say a word, so it'll get difficult. But either way, like I like doing it with her because like I gotta spend more time, and I gotta be like a teacher because in the future I want to be a teacher. So like there is kind of like I'm helping her, like teaching her, and it tells me if she really understood it or not.
So the question I have is, how can we get more Marias? And this is where I want to throw out an invitation to all of you. So first of all, I think each one of us in this room has played the role of one of the people in this triangle. So my first question is, who in this room, either now or at some point in your life, has played the role of a classroom teacher? Okay, keep your hands up. Who in the room has played the role of a family member where you had a young person in your house, you were trying to teach them? Families up. And who in this room at some point in their life has played the role of a student? Okay, so all the hands. Now, the triangle is often invisible to us, as relationships can be invisible. But if you looked around the room when all those hands were up, you can see the power of it, and you can see that all of us are already in the triangle, and all of us can make a difference in the triangle. So I want to invite you to help. If any of you know a principal or a superintendent where you live who you think would be interested in this, have them call us. That will help. If any of you want to donate to help us grow, we're trying to build more family playlists, particularly in science and in ELA, and also age down. Right now, they're mostly grades 3 through 8. That would really help us. And if you can spread the word about the triangle, that would really help us. So I invite you to take out your phone, to type joinpml.org into your phone's web browser. You'll then be able to share with me and how you can help. And after you do that, you'll be able to download a family playlist. It's a really cool science family playlist that you could do with your kids or with your grandkids back home. Because together, I think we can help all kids have a strong learning triangle, and that is the power of Power My Learning. Thank you.